Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to see inheritance between the constructor functions. In previous videos, we have seen what is constructor function and what is the prototype object and what will be the sequence of actions that will be done when you call the constructor function with a new keyword. So now we are going to see if one constructor function wants to inherit from the another constructor function. So what should be the order and what are the things to be considered? Before going to the coding, we will understand the actual flow. Let's consider the simple constructor function on your left-hand side that we discussed in the previous video. You have the constructor function called person, which will be using this keyword. And when you call the constructor function, you will be using the new keyword in front of the constructor function call. But when you call with new keyword, so what are the things will be done? It will be creating the empty object first, and it will point this keyword to the empty object, so that in the constructor function, this keyword will be used to set up the initial properties. In our case, it will be the first and last name. And after that, it will be creating person.prototype, which will be the another new object. And this object will be the underscore proto of all the instances of the objects that you create through the person constructor. In simple, if I create the P1 object from the constructor function of person, then that will be having underscore proto as person.prototype. In other words, the person.prototype is the shared object across all the instances of the instances that you create with the person constructor function. Then at last, it will be returning the person object that you can save it into any variable. So this is what we have seen in the previous constructor function understanding in a brief. But let's consider we have another constructor function which creates the student object. So rather than again repeating the same first and last name and other actions, other functions, which will be already available inside your person constructor function, let's consider. So in that scenario, rather than just repeating your code, we will be just inheriting from the person constructor function. So how to do that? If you consider the simple two flow of this one, for example, the person and student, it will be having the same flow. But let's say when you create the object, let's say when you create the new keyword, it will be creating the empty object and this will be pointing to the empty object. But if you are creating the instance of student, which will be inheriting from the person class, so it is necessary that whatever the initial parameters or the arguments that will be set over the person object, that also has to be set for the student object. So for that scenario, what we are doing is we are creating this, right? So this will be pointing to the empty object of the student. So we are passing this to the person. So person.call, we have seen what is the call method. So person.call will be called. So that means that your constructor function of person will be called. Then wherever this keyword available inside your constructor function, that keyword will be taken from our student this. So that means that this keyword will be passed from student to person, so that this keyword will be set for the initial parameters or initial arguments of the person constructor function. In our case, the first and last will be set. Then after, we are just creating the student.prototype like any constructor function. But just consider, it will be setting up the initial parameters that we mapped with by calling the person.call, right? So whenever you create the student object, the initial parameters will be set from the person. At the same time, if you have any other, along with the first and last, if you have any other arguments, that will be set in this keyword. If you see at the top, after calling person.call, you will be having this .course, because this .course is specifically pointing to the student object. It will be only applicable for the student object. So after returning this keyword, you will be having this .course will be set to the course what you are sending when you create the student object. Now at the initial level, at the constructor level, we are done. So we have inherited from the person for the student object as well by passing this keyword to person constructor. Now let's say when we create the student.prototype, in normal, when you have any functions or any properties which are not available inside the student object, it will be looking into the student.prototype. Why? Because as we discussed earlier, whatever the instances you are creating using the student constructor function, that will be having underscore proto as student.prototype. If you are looking into the student.prototype, even if it is not there some properties, since we are inheriting from the person class, we may be trying to use the properties that are available inside the person.prototype also, right? So for this reason, we need to just link between student.prototype to the person.prototype. So what we are doing, like, even you know that student.prototype is the object like any other object inside the JavaScript, and obviously it will be having __ proto. So once you have searched in the student.prototype, due to inheritance, you want to search in the person.prototype, so that you will be setting __ proto of the student.prototype object to the person.prototype. So that as soon as it's completed its student.prototype object entirely, it will be having __ proto, which will be leading to the next level. So that will be pointing to the person.prototype. So we are just going into the person.prototype. If it is available there, it will be checking there. This way we will be linking the student.prototype to the person.prototype. So how do you do that? That's where the object.create method comes. So student.prototype, you will be creating the new empty object, because whenever you create the prototype object for either it can be the person.prototype or student.prototype, both it will be the empty object. But now we are creating the empty object. Along with that, we are just setting up the __ proto of the student.prototype. So that's the reason object.create, you will be passing which object has to be the __ proto. In our case, it is the person.prototype. So we are sending that one. So at last, the student.prototype will be having the empty object, and it will be having the prototype or the backup __ proto pointing to the person.prototype. So this way we are just inheriting from the person class, or let's say we are having the inheritance between the person class and student. So this is the basic understanding about the inheritance between the two constructor functions. So we are just linking in two places, one at the constructor level and another at the prototype level. So once we understand this one, we will just go to the code and we will understand how it works. Here you can see the person and it has the first and last. And here is the student, it has the first and last and course. As you know that we want to inherit from person to student. So that's the reason first we will making the constructor call function person.call. That means that we are directly calling the person of, let's say, the method. But in this time we are just passing the this keyword also, which has to be considered this keyword inside your person constructor. Since the person constructor function needs only the first and last, we are sending that one. But however, in this area, we need to set up the course also. We are setting up the same here. Now you can see here, what is a person.prototype, what is a student.prototype before linking, because we have set only at the constructor level. We have not set up at the prototype level. But however, the prototype will be created and what is the values inside your prototype that you can see before linking. And in line number 17, we are just making the student.prototype as the empty object with __ proto as the person.prototype. We are doing this one by using the object.create method. Then after linking, what is the person.prototype and student.prototype? Now we have the prototype for both the constructor function, person and student. The need of person.prototype or the, let's say, student.prototype is just to have the shared properties across all the instances. So for that reason, we may need to add any properties to the any prototype. For example, here I am adding person.prototype, the Aadhaar number will be 10001. After adding, so where it is getting added, so that you can see. The same way you can add it to the student.prototype also. The property name is ID 4000. And after that, again, we can check it, what is the changes happening in the prototype object. Then let's say we are adding the same property under same, let's say the both student.prototype and the person.prototype. For example, the ID is the value which is available in both the person.prototype as well as student.prototype. Then at last we are creating the object for student, which will be needing only the first name, last name, and the course. Once you create the object, you can see the object and you can see the ID value. Now we have added the ID value in the both prototypes, for example, person and student, which value will be taken. In simple, it will be getting into the same class. So that means that wherever you create the object, for example, you are creating the student object. In the student object itself, if you have the ID value, it will not go in the next level. It will take from the same student constructor function. Then here you can see, so what is the student.prototype __ proto. So this is what we have set the link between the student.prototype to the person.prototype. So it should be the person.prototype. And we are proving that one whether both are same or not in the line number 44. So let's execute. Now we will come from the start. So let me clear and execute to have a clear view. Here you can see before linking the prototypes between the student and person, both are empty objects. So after linking the prototypes between the student and person, the first one will be always a person and second one will be always student. So that means that the first one person, it is still the empty object. But when you come to the student, it has the empty object at the first level. If that's not available, then you have the person prototype. So that's the representation here. Then after adding property type to the prototype of person, when you add to the prototype of person, it will be directly adding to the prototype object. Earlier it was empty. Now we are adding the Aadhaar equal to, or Aadhaar has the value of 10001. But in case of, let's say, the prototype of a student, still it is empty, followed by the person. So that means that it has the empty object and it will be having the backup of person prototype. Let's say we are adding to the prototype of student as well. Then it will be adding to the prototype empty object. Earlier it was empty object. Now we are adding the value as ID will be the 4000. Now we are adding the ID to the person also. After adding that one, you can clearly see in the person prototype, we have the ID value as a 9000. In the student prototype, we have the ID is equal to 4000 and it will be having the backup of a person prototype. Once you create the S1 object, let's say in our example, we have created the S1 as the object for the student constructor function. So you will be having the first name, last name, and the course. When you try to display the student or S1.id, it will be looking into the current object. Let's say the student object, it has the value of 4000. So it will be displaying the 4000 as the output. When you try to display the student.prototype __ proto, which means that if you don't find anything on the student.prototype, then what will be the backup? So the backup will be the person.prototype. So that's the reason you are seeing whatever we have added at the person.prototype, all the values will be the same object will be shown here. And if you ask me, the student.prototype will be the backup. So by using the __ proto, we have set up to the person.prototype. If both are same or not, it is showing the true value. So that means that which will be the linking between the student prototype and to the person.prototype. So this way we can make the inheritance between the two different constructor function. So this is the very underlying structure when you have the inheritance between the two classes also. We know that even classes follows the same constructor function for the single class level. But if you have the two classes and if you want to inherit from the one class to another class, you will be having the underlying structure between the two different constructor function like this. But it will be having more syntactical flavor so that you don't see this kind of linking or this kind of, let's say, calling the person.call or linking between the two prototypes that you don't need to do. You need to just mention extends keyword between the two classes so that you can inherit. So in the next section, we will be seeing how to do the same inheritance between the two classes. So this is just to make us understand the real inheritance happens in the JavaScript, something like this between the two constructor functions. So this is all about the inheritance between the constructor functions. So thanks for watching and have a great day.